Hello Internet. In this video we're going to study in great details Shopify Hydrogen architecture. So in the previous video where we left, we looked at how Shopify Hydrogen store looks like from a customer point of view, so from a user point of view. So we were looking at this store that was scaffolded by the Shopify CLI, but this time we get the developer's eyes view of the Shopify Hydrogen store. Okay, so just before we get into the nitty-gritty details, it's important to say that Shopify Hydrogen is based on the Remix framework, which is a very powerful framework for creating highly dynamic and super fast websites and web apps powered by React. Okay, so it's created by the same folks who created the React router package. Okay, so it's a very solid, rock solid framework, and no wonder Shopify chose this to build Hydrogen on top of. So that's why if you're familiar with Remix, you'll know that it has the concept of a loader and actions, and is a very powerful construct on which to build apps. So if we, for example, visit again the homepage, you'll see that the loader for the homepage was visited here, right? Which is basically this route here. Okay, the local.index, and I'm going to explain what that is, especially that local part. So if we visit the collection, okay, gonna see that the collection route was visited, right? And to make that even more clearer, we can add a console log here, okay? And then if we visit the product page, which is the local products handle here, we can see that that this particular loader will be visited. So if we go there and we visit the product, okay, and voila, see, in products handler, okay, loader. So now with that in mind, knowing that Hydrogen is basically Remix but with some nice developer experience and like a wrapper for easy integration with Shopify. As you can already even see here, you have Shopify Hydrogen types, so you don't have to create types to solve the guideline, the selected option and stuff like that. So the components and stuff, so it's very well integrated with the Shopify ecosystem. So what I think is the best way to build custom software is to use Shopify, use the tools they give you. They are powerful and solid. So let's start by what I would like to do in this video, with that introduction out of the way, is have a look at this repo that was created for us from the bottom up. So let's have a look at each file. Obviously, I'm not going to have a look at all of them, what I deem important. So the first one, obviously, we chose TypeScript. If you remember when we were scaffolding the project, we chose TypeScript as our we chose types instead of JavaScript. So that's the TypeScript configuration file here. As you can see, the notable thing in this file is that we are adding some types. Okay, we are adding types that are specific to Oxygen Worker types. And what is Oxygen? Well, the same way Hydrogen is powered by Remix, Shopify Oxygen is powered by Cloudflare Workers. Okay, so Cloudflare has this product called Cloudflare Platforms. So if you have a look quickly online, Cloudflare Platform, okay, you will see that this is basically what Shopify Platforms Workers, let's type that like that. They have this product here. I can't find it at the moment, but yeah, if we type, let's say, Shopify how we build, and I will add the link in the description, how we build Oxygen Shopify, okay, how we build Oxygen. Let's see, I'll add the link to this blog post in the description. But basically they explain how they see they're using Cloudflare underneath, right? So Oxygen is basically Cloudflare with some interaction, with some integration to the Shopify ecosystem. So let's say, for example, you see here you have the storefront workers, and then every time a user or shopper visits your store, a Cloudflare worker is run, okay? And that Cloudflare worker is deeply integrated with the Shopify ecosystem, as you can see here, right? You can see here that it's deeply integrated with Shopify. That's why, yeah, if you're using Oxygen, you get things like analytics out of the box without having to do them yourself, and a few other things that you'll have to do yourself. Obviously, it's not impossible, but yeah, if you're using Oxygen, you get a lot of things out of the box for free. So yeah, highly recommended if you're a store owner and you don't have a lot of dev resources to do some of these things yourself. Obviously, if you're doing them yourself, you have a lot more flexibility, and you can choose the technology stack the way that suits you best. But yeah, if you don't have those resources, obviously you want to use Oxygen and Hydrogen to power your custom storefront. So going back to this, the next file here, obviously it's Tailwind CSS. I won't drill too much into this, but basically yeah, Tailwind is a very popular way of styling web apps and websites nowadays, and this is the configuration file for Tailwind. So now next up is this file here. Let me collapse this a little bit. The next up is this file here. We have the Storefront API. This is a automatically generated file, and this is a very interesting file, and the reason is basically adding a lot of types to your TypeScript environment, and which you wouldn't have to do yourself. So if you search, for example, for product, okay, oops, what have I done? Remove that. So if you search for product, for example, we do it like this, okay. All right, so you can see that, for example, here you have predictive product fragment. All of these types are, there's a deep integration with the Storefront API. As you can see, the Storefront API is everywhere, so you don't have to. The nice thing about using Hydrogen is that you don't have to recreate all of this. So there's already a tight integration with the Shopify Hydrogen. So every endpoint in the Shopify Hydrogen has an equivalent. If you go back to the mock shop for one moment here, mock.shop. Yeah, you see here that this is an endpoint that's returning products, right? And once you do this query, right, you need to have it typed. You need to have the data that are returned by the query typed for a better developer experience, and to be able to catch bugs a lot easier, right? So this is, for example, a JSON here, which has the payload here. You see you have the title, the description, and so on. You don't want those API endpoints to return untyped data. So yeah, using this, obviously if you're using any other React framework or any other like web framework, you can just copy paste this, and I think it should work. It will work definitely, but yeah, here you have it for free from the Shopify CLI. So highly recommend the Shopify Hydrogen way of building storefronts. So now this one is a very important one here, the server.ts. Basically to analyze it, we're gonna have a look at it quickly at a glance, and then bottom up. Okay, so here we have this file. We have, first of all the imports here. Obviously, let me collapse that for now, but here you have this file. First of all is the development and the production server. Okay, so when you run npm run dev, as we did to launch this app, this is the server that is powering the app. Okay, and it's, like I said earlier, Shopify Oxygen is powered by Cloudflare, and in local development mode you have what is called mini Oxygen, right? I think they have it somewhere here, they write it somewhere here, mini oxygen, okay? And mini oxygen, when you run npm run dev, okay, the first thing that is run is this server here, and it's gonna inject bindings into your server, okay? So Cloudflare has this concept of bindings, and one of them is the environment variables. Another one is the Cloudflare KV, the Cloudflare key values, and the Cloudflare durable objects and stuff like that. All of these things are bindings that Cloudflare inject into the function, because you have to remember this is a function. It's not a long-running server like something like Node. So whenever a request is sent to the Cloudflare worker, okay, a new function is created on the edge, okay, on an edge server, an edge platform, to run that function, okay? So it's not a long-running server like a Node or an Express server. That's very important to keep in mind. So every time you run this function, okay, this is Cloudflare injects bindings into your execution context, right? You have here the execution context itself, you have the environment variables, you have the request that was sent by the user, right? So the next thing that happens, okay, is obviously we want to check if there is the authenticate the session secret. So if that environment variable is defined, if it's not defined, we need that defined. So if it's not defined, then that's potentially maybe the developer forgot to do that, and we don't want the app to run not authenticated, right? That would be a big security concern. So if the session secret is not defined, we throw an error here, and then this wait until, I'll come back to that later, but it's very important because of the way the edge works, right? So when a request is completed, let's say you send a request to the database or to an API, when the request is completed, you need to tell the worker that request has completed. So and then you have to bind, like you basically here it's a callback that will execute the tier up operation. Let's say you connect to a database, okay, and then you maybe let me show an example of this. I don't know if I can find it online. If we find the Neon database, Neon DB Cloudflare pages example, all right, you see clearly what I'm talking about. Easy integration here. You will see what I'm talking about here. I have code examples. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, exactly. There we go. So you see here, this is what this wait until is all about. You see, you create, in this case, Neon is basically a serverless Postgres database that integrates perfectly with Cloudflare. So here we create a client for the serverless database. We connect to the client, okay? We make a query. We send a query to the database, and then we wait until this is non-blocking. So the response is going to continue, but we need to close the connection, because remember, once again, this is a serverless environment. It's not a long-running server, so we need to tell the fetch function, okay, when the it's basically a callback that we instruct our Cloudflare worker function that the fetch or the query has completed and it needs to be closed, okay, because otherwise when the next query is sent, okay, when the next query is sent, the Cloudflare worker will still be in execution, and you can't have you basically get an error. So if you don't use this wait until, you get an error. So that's what it's doing here, and this is a very simple example where you can see it in operation, and that's why you have it here, okay. And that's why also you see here in the storefront, Shopify uses this, for example, to close when you instantiate the storefront client that Shopify gives you, okay. They need that function because they are doing obviously GraphQL queries, and when the query is completed, they need to instruct Cloudflare to shut down the connection, right? And stuff like that. So that's why they need that context, okay? And obviously here, looking at it from a more high level, let me collapse this for the first, okay? You can see here, here. So we have, remember, we have the execution context here, but in addition to that, we have the upload context, okay? So to show you what the upload context is, let's open this env. Let's go to the definition of this env thing, okay? This environment variable interface. You have here the definition of the upload context. So what's the difference between the execution context and the upload context? Very, very important thing to know when you're using Remix, okay? So the execution context is everything that Cloudflare or the execution environment, whether you're deploying to Netlify or Cloudflare or Vercel, or in this case Oxygen, which is basically like a Shopify wrapped Cloudflare Worker environment, okay? So everything that the server injects into your fetch function, that's what is called the execution context, okay? Now for your app context, is everything that the loaders are using. So if you go, for example, to products.handle, okay, this is the context, this is the upload context. As you can see, if I hover on it, you see it says upload context, right? And that upload context, as defined here, has five things in it. It has the environment variables, okay? All the environment variables are necessary for the storefront to run. And these are, like I said earlier, bindings injected from here, okay? These are bindings injected into your fetch function by the Cloudflare worker, okay? So these are automatically injected into your fetch function by Cloudflare, but you need to define the interface here to have types, okay? Then you have your cart, okay? You have your storefront, you have your session, which is basically handling the authentication for you, and you have that wait until function that I explained earlier, right? Because sometimes you need to, most of the time, I would highly recommend to have that wait until in your services, like the storefront service, the cart service, but sometimes you need to have them a bit more granularity on how you use the wait until function. So you need to pass that as well into your loaders and actions. And in this particular case, we don't use that in this loaders, but some of the loaders in this app do, and we're gonna have a look at them in subsequent videos, I'm sure. So this is the difference between the upload context and the execution context, okay? And one thing that's very important to know is that the environment variables, the way environment variables work in Cloudflare are a bit different to the way they work in Node. For example, in a Node project, if you're familiar with Node, you know that pretty much everywhere in your app, if you do process.env, let's say, I don't know, server, I don't know, Shopify storefront API URL or API key, okay, you will have access to this environment variable anywhere in the code, okay? But that's not going to work if you are using Cloudflare, which is basically what Oxygen is under the hood, right? It's not going to work. So that's why it's very important when you're still in the server context here, when you're defining your server context, anything that needs to be accessed by the loaders, okay, needs to be provided in this env, okay, like the env that is defined here, okay, needs to be added here in the bindings here like this, and then you need to pass them down into the upload context so that they can be used in your context. I think the best way to have a look at this is to look at the root route, okay, which is this one. If I open the context here, you can see we're getting a lot more things. We're getting the storefront, the session, and the cart, right? So and if you want it, we can get the env as well. There's not going to be a TypeScript complaint, and I can have a look. I can console log even. I can console log the env thing, okay? I can console log this, and you see sec env, and then I'm going to JSON stringify the whole thing, otherwise it's not going to be visible. Okay, so if I do this, okay, you'll see what is provided to us. So if I refresh the app very quickly, localhost, sec, localhost, like this, and I see here, you see all the environment variables were printed for me, right? All of them, all of the environment variables are printed. Okay, so that's how you pass in environment variables in a Shopify Hydrogen storefront. If you do that the way we do it normally in Node, it's not going to work at all, right? So I hope you get the point. Obviously, while you're still in the server context, in the server.ts file, the process, because here you still have access to process.env.node.env, okay? But anywhere else apart from this file, you don't have access to this anymore. So you need anything that any environment variable you think you will have need for, you need to add them to this env. Obviously, in this case, we are only using the env that was defined in the bindings by us in the Cloudflare Worker environment, or in the Shopify Oxygen environment, and then we're passing them like this. Okay, but yeah, that's basically it in terms of what this is, the difference between execution context and upload context. I hope that is clear. And one more important thing is in that same train of thoughts, is that because you can't have access to your environment variables, it's very important that all your services like the Storefront API, the cart, and if you had a CMS, you're gonna have like a const, let's say you're gonna define the CMS like this, CMS service, something like that, and you're gonna have CMS service, and you're gonna have like let's say, I don't know, sanity client, okay, and then you're gonna pass the API key like this, and it's gonna come from, once again, as you know now, env.sanity key. Okay, because once again, anywhere else from this file you don't have access to these things. Okay, you don't have access to for example, let's say you didn't define this here. Okay, anywhere else from this file and the loaders, you don't have access to the env. Okay, you don't have access to the environment variables, the loaders, and obviously the actions as well. So the best place therefore to create your services is when you're in this execution, once you're defining the fetch function. Okay, that's the best place to do that, because here you have access to the environment variables and you can instantiate your services like this, and then pass them down to the execution context here like this. Okay, and if you do that, okay, they'll be accessible in your execution context. So obviously here we can come here and we can add one more thing. We can say, okay, we can say sanity client, and then we can define this as let's say a string for now, okay, just to make things very simple. Or let's say, yeah, let's define this as a string. Okay, and then if I do this sanity CMS like this, okay, sanity CMS, and I come here, I define the sanity CMS, and I add that like that as a string, just to add some gibberish here, and then I put it here. Okay, just with this, now in all your routes, okay, you have access to sanity, okay, to the sanity CMS here, and then I can console log that here. Obviously it's a string already, I don't need to stringify it anymore, but let's just do it for the sake of it. So if I collapse, you see it's already there. That's how you inject the dependency in your Storefront API, and that's the best way to share basically like business logic functions with your loaders and actions. Okay, I hope you see how this works. You come here in the upload context, you define what it's going to look like. Obviously here is a very simple example, I just put in a string, but you can put anything you want. Okay, and in your server.ts you instantiate that object and you pass it down in the get load context function, and just with that is now accessible from your loaders and actions in the remix routes. Okay, I hope that is clear. I spent a lot of time on this, but this is very important. And one final thing, sorry to spend a lot of time on this, but this is very important. I usually don't recommend, like it's done here, to pass in the environment variables in the upload context, right? Because the reason is, it's very easy for a bad console log. Let's say the developer, okay? Let's say the developer gets the environment variable here like this, okay? And then sends them in the return thing, okay? Sends them here like this by mistake, all right? Okay, by mistake. Or the developer can send the context to let's say to the products page, okay, like this, and then all of a sudden you have your context here, right? Oops, sorry, context like this with the environment variables, right? And if I console log this, you see in the browser environment that now all our environment variables are visible because I'm logging the context, right? So that's why I usually, if I open the console here and I refresh this, which page is that? It's the product handle page. So if I visit the product page, you see the context is visible. Let me zoom on this a bit more, with all the environment variables visible to the user, you see, which is a big problem, right? Like, this is a security concern. The developer, especially if you don't have if you have junior developers in your team, right, they can do this kind of mistakes, right? They can expose security, like as they were debugging something while they were working on the project, they may expose highly critical information, and before you know it, your store is under attack, and things are your customer details are stolen and stuff like that, credit cards information. So I think it's quite dangerous to expose the environment variables, to pass down the environment variables in the upload context. So usually what I do, I don't pass this here. I will instead force every service. I will wrap this within a service, right? So for example, like they did here for the storefront or the cart, okay? So if I come here in the storefront, you see every service, like the storefront service, the let's say for the sake of it, the sanity service in case it wasn't a real client, or the cart service, every service that needs to anywhere I need to interact with the environment variables, I'll wrap that in a service and instantiate it like this, so that I never ever expose the environment variables in the upload context. I think that's a bad practice. So yeah, that's the last thing I wanted to say about this. So let me revert. Anyway, I'll do that off camera. So the next thing, as part of the architecture of this project, that I think is interesting for us to have a look at, is this. I think we already saw some of this as I was explaining the server.ts file. So yeah, basically this thing here. One thing you may not have noticed this, but this environment variable, this interface for handling the environment variable is defined in the global. It's declared in the global. Okay, so it means that whenever we are using this thing, we don't have to import it, okay, which is quite nice. So any type that you think will be very used in your application, let's say we are defining an interface for a custom type, okay, a custom type. You define it here. Anything that you think is going to be used very often, and you don't want to keep importing it everywhere in your app, right? You say, okay, property one is a string, property two is a number, right? Let's do that like that, right? You don't have to import this, just like you don't have to import interface when we were using it here. You see, never in the imports you see the mention of env, right? And that's quite handy and useful when you have custom types that are used a lot in your app. You don't want to keep importing them. It just makes your app, your code a bit dirty. So if I define now the custom type, an instance of that custom type, I'll just call it custom type, and then I type it as, oops, custom type. See here, so I don't need to define it, and yeah, TypeScript already knows that I need to pass in a string to this guy, and for prop2 I need to pass in a number. Okay, and TypeScript is very happy, and you see here I never needed to import this. So that's why this remix.m file is for, this remix.m.d.ts is for, so you can add types, custom types to the remix context here, and that's very, very handy, and I use that all the time in my remix projects for things that are, for objects that are like ubiquitous in the app. The remix config.js file, okay, this one is very interesting as well, but it's more like remix specific. So here you define the server, which is what we saw here before, and explained to you that it was the server in a development environment. It's going to run, if you're using Shopify Oxygen, it's going to use mini Oxygen. If you're using Cloudflare, it's going to use mini Flare, and in production, it's going to use Oxygen and Cloudflare respectively. Okay, so another one that's interesting here, obviously we're saying that we're using Tailwind, we're using PostCSS, and a few other things that are important. I think watch files, yeah, these watch pads is interesting because mini Flare or mini Oxygen compiles your code into this public folder here. Okay, and this is where basically things like the bundle and so on are defined and so on. So that's why it keeps, the server watches this folder here for changes, and changes your app accordingly as you make changes. These future flags, because Remix at the moment is undergoing some like a migration from one point, like the version 1 to version 0.2, and there are a lot of improvements, so I highly recommend, and I'll add this in the description, this link in the description. There are very, very good changes that were added, introduced in version 2. Namely, I think out of all this, the things that are very interesting to me, particularly as a storefront developer, is how you handle the meta tags. So there are some very good improvements on how you handle the meta tags here and the headers, so it makes doing SEO for your store a lot easier, okay, and a lot more flexible as well. Another very interesting thing is how to do routing. Some people don't like this new way. I do. I think it's a lot more cleaner and easier, and makes it a better developer experience. So check that out. I'll add the link in the description. So our next stop really is the PostCSS. Really, this is just about configuring the Tailwind CSS to style our files. So if you're not familiar with this, go in the Tailwind documentation, the Tailwind CSS documentation, and you check PostCSS to explain what this is. The package.json, obviously, this is familiar to everyone that has run a JavaScript project. Here, these scripts are basically all the npm run such and such. For example, we ran the first one, which was npm run dev. Okay, you can run npm run preview, npm run type check. So if you have TypeScript, if you wanted to make sure that your file, your project is okay with as far as TypeScript goes, you can run type check, and it's gonna check your project and make sure that there is no TypeScript error. And if there were, in our case there is not, it will have highlighted it here. Okay, build, obviously when you're ready to deploy your project to production, you're gonna create a bundle here. Let's say npm run build, and it's gonna create a production bundle. Obviously, most of the time you don't do this manually yourself. You let your CI/CD do that for you. So you're gonna connect your project, you're gonna push your project to a repository like Git or Bitbucket or GitLab and so on, and then they have CI/CD, for example, GitHub Functions to do all this continuous integration and continuous deployment for you. Obviously, in the production settings, you want to have a script for running your tests, both your unit tests and your end-to-end tests. And if you have a premium LiftedCommerce starter kit, we have obviously tests a huge battery of tests, and both unit tests, integration tests, and the end-to-end tests to make sure that your app is always running smoothly for your users and they don't have issues. So that's very important. Obviously, there's the starter kit here that Shopify gives you doesn't have tests, but any production product should have tests. Very important. The next stop in this file, basically we define the pre-tier config. It's quite the standard thing. The dependencies here, it's quite minimal but functional. Here you see we have a lot of Shopify specific things like the Shopify CLI, the Shopify Hydrogen, Shopify Remix for Oxygen. So Shopify Hydrogen, like I said earlier, is basically Remix, right? It's basically Remix, and Shopify Oxygen is basically Cloudflare workers, okay? And then you have GraphQL, because the Storefront API is a GraphQL API, like we saw before with the mock shop. I closed it again, but we saw that earlier. And then you have the dev dependencies, right? So that's standard stuff. I think the next important thing really in this thing is to quickly have a look at what is in here, okay? So you have this. Let me close the other things here because it becomes confusing. Like to have a lot minimal set of files opened. So here we have some utilities, function and hook. So you have a utility hook that is used by that was created by Shopify to get the variant of a product based on the product handle. And by handle we mean, like, if you're visiting a page like this one, products, short, and so on, this is the handle. And actually you can even see that in the routes they're defined here. You see this route products, this one handle. That's the we can log that actually for you to see. So if we log the handle, you can see here, if you log the handle, log handle, okay, let me connect it, collapse this one, comment this one, sorry, and then we'll move this. If I refresh this, you see the handle here. If I go down, okay, shorts, you see, this is the handle here, shorts. Okay, so you have this utility function, okay, to create the product variant, the URL of a variant based on the handle and the selected option. So you see here, when the user selects something, okay, when the user select, this is the function that's basically this is the thing that's called, okay? So when the user changes the variants and stuff, the URL is generated by this hook, and this hook uses this business logic. Obviously, like I said earlier, in a production environment product, in a production product, you need to have unit tests for these kind of things, and that's what one of the things that LiftedCommerce brings is making sure that we go beyond the default starter kit that is provided by the library, by the Shopify CLI. Okay, we add things like unit tests, security, enhanced security, and stuff like that. So check us out on liftedcommerce.com. So to continue in terms of this repo structure, the next thing is the root.tx. The root is basically the root route, okay? So that's the first React component that is run, okay? When you visit a page, okay, before running any, like the actual routes here, individual routes for each page, this is kind of like the meta route, okay? This is the first DOM, like and even as you can see here, this is where we created the HTML, okay? The HTML is created here, HTML page, that's where we start the definition of our HTML document, right? So here you can see, oh sorry, this is the error boundary. First of all, let's see here the app. This is the HTML, right? You can see here how it's structured. We have the lang, and obviously when we look at the internationalization, we will see how to dynamically define the language of our page, right? Which is very good for SEO and stuff like that, and user experience as well. And then we have the metas, and then we have the meta tags, right? So this is a component that's provided by Remix to handle SEO for us, okay? So when you add this meta, okay, so this is going to basically pull the meta every route. If you remember, every route defines a meta. You see meta here, and when you add this meta here, okay, the meta that is defined, when you export this meta from an individual route and you add this component in the root route, okay, now when you visit that product page, that's what is created. So you see here for this particular page we have hydrogen and then the product title, and that's exactly what is happening here. So if I change this and I say custom storefront, and I save, right, you see it changes, right? It changes here. That's exactly what you do. And to show you that the two are connected, if I comment this one out, it's not going to disappear. You see, it disappears. It's no longer showing us that. So the two are connected. So the meta here is connected. It's basically rendering, adding to your HTML document anything that you define in the individual route. Okay, obviously when you're doing, and that's again one of the things that LiftedCommerce brings to the table, is that we have an in-depth SEO meta description with much more than just the title. Okay, we go far beyond that. We add title, the description, open graph, HTTP headers and stuff like that. We add a lot of things. If you have a multi-store, an international store, we add things like hreflang and stuff like that to our starter kit. So check us out once again on liftedcommerce.com if you need an in-depth SEO, some starter kit that goes a lot more deeper into SEO. So now similarly for the links, any link that you define here, basically these are where you define your assets. In this case, the Tailwind CSS, the reset styles, and so on. So every assets, you define them in the links here, and then they are rendered here. Okay, so this is the header of your component, and then you have the body. Okay, and usually you can also add a footer, but they didn't add one here in this case. And then you have the layout. The layout is basically a component that comes with the scaffolding, the Shopify CLI. They give you a nice, obviously if you're building, this is just like a bare minimum, right? So obviously this is one of the things that you're going to customize or completely rewrite if you're building, if you want to improve the look and feel. It's just like very minimalistic. Layout is just the menu here, and then and then the content here. So very minimalistic, but it works obviously. So and then inside of this layout, you render the page. Okay, so to show you what I mean by that, if I comment this out and I add something else, obviously if I comment this out, it's probably gonna give me an error. And then if I come here, you can see it's empty. What is this? See, the page is now empty, and whatever page I go to is going to be empty, because this outlet is basically rendering inside of this layout the route that you're currently visiting. And remember, each route defines a meta, defines a loader, defines this is just a utility function, but defines the default export in each route is the component that's being rendered, right? So you see here you have the default component. The default React component is this product here. So if I put that back in the route, in the root route, okay, put the outlet back, you see it's back. If I go back to the product page on which we were before, it's back. But to show you once again that the two are connected, if instead of rendering this thing here, I rendered some gibberish, return nothing. Okay, nothing. I do like this, you see, this is nothing, right? So this is the products handle route, and then instead of returning whatever the document, the page should have, I'm returning some gibberish. It's gonna show me this. And even more so, if I remove this entirely, okay, it's gonna return the JSON that was contained in the loader, that was returned by the loader. So you can turn your route into like JSON APIs basically. So if I comment this out altogether and I look at this like this, you see it returns. Oh, one sec. You can Oh, it depends on what you're returning from here. So you can force this to, I think, yeah, it's because this is a defer. But if it was a simple JSON, let's say I return JSON, okay, JSON, and I do nothing, okay, like this, gonna see nothing, see nothing completely. Now you've turned your route into a JSON, into an API endpoint, right? Instead of an HTML. So now it's returning, instead of returning HTML, it's returning JSON. Okay, so that's how you do that. Okay, that's why sometimes in some remix project you have a route called routes, then API dot the route that you want to define, and in those kind of routes, instead of returning a HTML with the React component, you just define the loader if it's a get endpoint, or the action if it's a post endpoint, and then from there you have an API endpoint powered by Remix. So I'm gonna comment this one out again and remove this nothing and remove this one here, and that'll be it really. And then we'll be back to what we had earlier, which is the product page, right? So the next stop here for us to look at is the scroll restoration. Okay, the scroll restoration component is a very nice one, added by the Remix team. And basically what this is if I go, let me see if I can demo this for you guys. If I scroll down to this level, okay, see I'm on the root page, I'm on the home page, okay, and I scroll down, okay, and then I visit a collection page, and then I go back. You see I'm still at the bottom, right? I don't know if you noticed that, but here, let me do that again. I'm on the root page, okay, the home page, sorry. I scroll down, okay, and then I visit a different page, and then I go back. You see I'm still at the level where I was before I went to the collection page. I'm not, when I go back, I'm not at the top of the page, right? Which is really good. It's a good scroll experience. So if I comment that out, let's see how the scroll experience looks like now. But what have I done? Roots. Okay, I commented that out. All right. So let's try and do that again. I think I'm correct in saying that this is what this is for. Okay. So let's do the experiment. Let me refresh the page. Let's scroll down. Okay. Now we're at the bottom again, and then I visit the collection page, and then I go back. Let me try and do that again. Scroll, and then I go back. See, I'm at the top. You see, let me do that again. Let me refresh the page. Okay, I'm at the top. I scroll down. Okay, and then I visit the collections page, and then I go back. You see, I'm back at the top of the page, right? So this is what the scroll restoration component does. Okay, so let me comment that out again, comment that in again, and redo the experiment once more. Okay, let me refresh the page. I scroll down, okay, visit the collections page, and then I scroll back, and then I visit the page that was back in the history. You see, because of that component, I have a very nice visit experience, right? So the user can go back and forth between page and still keep the context, or the location, or the what he was, basically the context of where he was in between page navigation, which I think is very good, and we get that for free with Remix, which is a great thing. And then this is basically for developers. The scripts here is basically handling the hydration of so if you're using JavaScript, which obviously Remix goes a long way without using JavaScript, right? So that's one of the biggest selling points of Remix. But obviously these days most websites have JavaScript. Most users have JavaScript enabled on their browser. So this is for adding nice things like optimistic UI and stuff like that if you're using the scripts and so on. And then the live reload is basically when I make changes on the development environment. When I change, let's say, this file, okay, I'd never have to reload. I never have to reload the page for the changes to be visible to me, right? it just happens when I change something here in anywhere in the code base. Basically, the changes are reflected instantaneously or in a short amount of time because of this live reload component that is added here. And it's important to say that it's important to say that the order in which these are added to the page matters some, not all of them, and I don't remember exactly from memory, but the meta or the scroll restoration, the order in which they're added to the HTML page matters somewhat. So please check out I think it's the Remix Gotcha page here. If you come here in the Remix Gotchas, you'll find out what I'm talking about, the Gotchas. Okay, good. So visit this page. You will see there's some intricacies on how it maybe not this page, but yeah, you get the point. Okay, so it's important to be careful how you stack the components in this page. Okay, so now after with that out of the way, the next stop for us is the entry server. Okay, .tx. All right, so this one basically is the middleware. It's Remix's middleware. Okay, so if you're doing things like internationalization, A/B testing, and stuff like that, this is where you want to play with. You want to do these kind of things, right? So you want to get, because every request that gets sent to every route that is visited by the user first executes this middleware. Okay, and this is a server middleware, so it's going to run on the server, and it has the context, it has the request, it has the response status code, it has the response headers, but these are just like things that you can override here. As you can see, it's get overwritten here like this, and then you create a body. Okay, so you can see if I return, for example, here you see we are streaming the return body. Okay, so instead of doing that, if I do const dot, if I do let, let's say I do let body equals to this. Okay, you can see it's returning that, and then I do body equals, I just want to override that. Okay, body equals nothing once again, and you see that we have nothing pretty much in every page now. So let me do this like this. Okay, and I'm comment this one out, otherwise I get a TypeScript error. Okay, and I go back to my page and I refresh. You see we have nothing. Okay, nothing once more, because this is a middleware, and this is not just specific to the collections page. It's specific. It's everything. Every page will return this because this is the middleware. Okay, nothing. So that tells you if you want to do things like I said earlier, heavy personalization and stuff like that, you have the context of the request, and from the context of the request you can get which user it is. Okay, you can have like because the request carries the token that is associated with the user visiting page at any given time. It carries things like the user's location and stuff like that. So you can say, okay, if the user is visiting the page from the US, I need to remove that thing that I added. I need to move this first. Yeah. Okay, so if the user is visiting the page, the website from the US, do this. If the user is visiting the website from the UK, do this. So in this case, for example, let's console log what is in the request log, I think request, and then I'll go with JSON stringify. I don't know if this will work, but let's try. Okay, so let's console log whatever it is that we have in the request that is sent, and you'll see what is available for us to play with when we do this. Okay, let's see. I don't think we have much. Console log request. Let me try that again. All right, I don't think we have much in this. Yeah, I think it's, yeah, this is not a string. I need to get like forgotten how you get let me get the body of the request. Let me try that. Okay, refresh this. Yeah, I've forgotten how you, yeah, basically how you can get this, but you get the point, right? I was trying to to console log. I've forgotten how you do that, but let's try to console log some of the things that we have in the request here, so you can see what's available to us. I think the URL, the request URL, oh yeah, request URL, things like that. Right, the request URL, you can see that here. Where is that? Why don't, oh yeah, I think this is, I don't think I can console log from here, or could I? Anyway, never mind. I was trying to show you things that are available in the request. But yeah, the next thing you want to know about this is that in the case of a bot, okay, because here we are streaming the content, okay, so we are streaming the content, and what do I mean by streaming the content? Okay, we are awaiting the content because here, for example, if I take the case of a products page, okay, which is obviously the most important page, one of the most important page on an e-commerce store, you want to make that page to load extremely fast, right? You want that page to load very fast, okay? And when you're loading a product page, obviously you want to load the page, the product itself, like this is done here, okay? This is the product itself, but you want to load, let's say, I don't know, the variants. You may have a recommendation engine, and obviously we don't want to do this. The context here, this is what I was doing as I was demoing security concerns earlier, so let's remove that. Let's remove that from our server.txt file. Let's do that. One sec. So, yeah, I think I've removed that already. Okay, so that's good. So where was I? Okay, so here I was saying you can have, you see all the things that we're returning from the product page here. We are returning the product and the product variants. If I go to the collection page, let's say collections handle, let's see what's defined in there in the loader. Just the collection, okay. But yeah, I can make my point from here, okay. My point is this is more important than this, okay. The products variants, typically, I think this is maybe not the best example, but imagine you had recommendations, recommended, similar products, well, okay, similar products, something like that, and you had a storefront query, let's say, I don't know, similar products query. Okay, obviously that query doesn't exist, but just for the sake of argument, right? So let's say we have something like this, okay, for the sake of argument. You have, let's say this was taking a lot of time to return, okay? You can add that to the context like this, similar products, okay? You can add that to the context, and then what this will do is, this is an awaited query, okay? This is awaited, the product here, okay? So this will wait in the loader to return, but anything else that is not awaited will be sent as a promise. As you see here, this is a promise. If I hover on this, I think I can make my point just with the variants anyway. If you hover here, you see that this is a promise, right? This is a promise, and this is an actual thing. It's not a promise anymore, okay? So which that means is that when I'm visiting this page, okay, when I'm visiting a page like this one, okay, the product that we want to see is rendered first, and then say, imagine we had some recommendations below the page, below the product itself. We don't need, when we are rendering this page, we need to show the product itself fast. The recommendations can come later, and that's why we call streaming the content of a page, of an HTML page, okay? So the content is being streamed, okay? So if I go back here, which is what I was, so we have here, the content is being streamed bit by bit. So we first give the content, the main content, to the user, and then supporting contents like product variants and product recommendations can come later on. That is when we are giving the experience to an actual user, okay? But in the case of search engines, we want the Google crawler or the Bing crawler to see the whole page, okay? This is very important for SEO, this bit here, very important from SEO perspective, okay? You want Google to see the whole page, okay? Because if Google comes and just sees this, and all your, this could be first considered thin content, and then all your SEO goodies that you have added at the bottom and so on, the description, all the things that you spend a lot of time, your content team spend a lot of time writing, may not be visible to the search engine. So from an SEO perspective, these 3 lines are very important, okay? And what they're doing is, if this is a bot, if the request was made by a bot, and this bot is provided to you by this nice JavaScript library called isBot, okay, we await the whole content until all the body is ready, okay, before sending the response. Very important, folks, very important if you want to get good SEO results with your Shopify Hydrogen storefront. You await the whole body, okay, before returning the response. Otherwise, the search engine, like I said earlier, may just see this bit, may just see this part, which is already awaited, but the non-awaited bit may not be seen. It depends on how long it will take to do it. But but that means that you also, when you're awaiting content, you need to make sure also that it's fast, okay? Because if it's not fast, then you're going to be penalized by bots in terms of your core web vitals, right? So if the awaited content takes way too long to return, let's say 5 seconds, even 1, 2, 3 seconds, that's already too long. So it means that for every page that the bot is crawling, is spending 2-3 seconds. That's not good. The crawl budget and stuff like that, you're gonna be if you have a lot of pages, for example, you're gonna have to index all of them as fast as you want, okay? So very, very important. So as you can see here at LiftedCommerce, technically savvy, but in terms of SEO as well, we're very, very technically savvy in terms of technical SEO, on-page SEO. We know what we're doing. So check us out on liftedcommerce.com, and hope you find great, and you have great resources there as well. So now if you go to the entry.client, okay, this is a very simple page. It's basically handling the hydration for us. It's very technical, so I won't get into that. And finally, we have our routes, really. Oh, first of all, the Tailwind CSS, where we define the Tailwind style. It's very minimalistic at this time, but it does the job for the purpose of the demo store. And then we have our routes, okay? This is basically all the this is basically Remix, okay? And we're gonna get into the details of each of these routes in subsequent videos, but just in terms of the structure, okay? What this local brackets dollar symbol local is all about, this is it's what's called an optional segment. So if I go to the Remix documentation and I check the routes, okay, you'll have the concept of an optional segment. Okay, optional segment, where is that? You see, exactly here. And then this is for the language. And the idea is the store can be visited by, let's say, someone in France, okay? They can visit products like this, okay? Obviously this route, this is not defined. And let's say English. I don't know if this is defined. Okay, it's not defined because the language is not, defined. So it's just here for this. It's the capability is there, implemented in the storefront, but it's not yet added, okay? Capability is there. Provision is made for you to render to display the page in different languages, but the different languages have not been added, okay? So that's what it's for, and it's optional, meaning that, let's say if you have the default language of your store, okay? And the default language, I'll say most of you watching this will be English, okay? So for the default language, usually you don't want the default language to appear in the URL, okay? But for other languages, let's say Spanish and French and stuff like that, you want products, f/fr/products. And one side note there, at LiftedCommerce, we have templates that allow you not only to translate, to add, we have starter kits that not only allow you to translate to add the local here, but also translate the segment itself, okay? Because you can see here what Shopify gives you out of the box is fr/products, es in the case of Spanish/products. The segment itself is not translated, but we managed to create starter kits at LiftedCommerce that allows you to translate even the segment itself. So it's hyper localized and and it's very powerful from an SEO perspective if you want to translate the part segment itself. So now if you go back here, we have the index file. This is your sitemap. Okay, I'm gonna create a video specifically dedicated to this, so let's skip that. Encourage you to check the channel once that comes out. And obviously similar to that, we have the robot.txt. Same thing. I'm going to create a video specifically for that. And for all your like the predictive search, right? I demoed to you initially this thing here, the search here. Basically, it's using this thing called the predictive search, and you see it uses the API, like I was saying earlier. This route only defines the loader and the action, and it doesn't define a React component, so it can be used as an API, and that's exactly what they're doing here in this demo store. And you have the blog. Okay, this is just gonna render the blog posts that are on your Shopify Plus account. Okay, so I think all in all, I highly encourage you to have a look at this. Obviously, like I said, I'm just doing a quick walkthrough. I'm gonna drill down into each of these routes individually in subsequent videos, and similarly for the components, which I think will be the next video. We're gonna look at all the Shopify Hydrogen components, right? What is provided to us by Shopify when it comes to the components that they give us to create a Shopify Hydrogen store. I hope you found this video useful. We cover a lot of things. We cover a lot of things in terms of security, in terms of SEO, in terms of customization and performance and so on. So I hope you found this video, and if you did, please give us a like, and feel free to visit liftedcommerce.com if you need help with any Shopify Plus, Shopify Hydrogen related services, and check our starter kits to see what we can do, how we can help, and help you launch your Shopify custom store a lot quicker than it will take normally. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.